Thank you for tuning into another episode of Ambitiously Driven Podcast. I want you to like, I want you to share, I want you to subscribe. Today we are talking about navigating through trauma, and I'm so excited to talk about this and have this amazing young lady as our guest on this episode, Virginia Lawson. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just a little bit.
Well, which camera am I looking at?
Yeah,
I'm going to talk to you. I just want to... People, hi. I am Virginia Lawson. Can we start over?
Keep going, keep going.
You want me to keep going?
Keep going.
All right. I'm Virginia Lawson, and what about me? I'm 31 years old. I am an author of 2 books, currently in school for psychology and biblical counseling. I don't know what more to say. That's where I'm at right now.
That's good. An author already at 31, not just one book, but 2 amazing, phenomenal books.
Absolutely.
Good Morning God. It's a 21-day interactive devotional encouraging one's time with God. What led you to start this devotional?
I was going through an interesting time period with God, and I would like to call it boot camp.
Okay.
And so there was a time where I wasn't doing anything extra outside of church, work, and just reading the word, praying, fasting, listening to T.D. Jakes, listening to Dr. Matthew Stevenson, Dr. Cindy Trim, and this was back in like 2015. I had just moved back the year prior from Maryland, and every time I would open my eyes, I would literally say, "Good morning, God." I wouldn't look at my phone. I wouldn't do anything else. Those were my first words. And when I realized, I wrote down a list of books that I would write, and that was the first one. And so it's actually not the first book that I've written, but it's the first one that I've published.
Wow. That is awesome. So the topic tonight is navigating through trauma. Can you just tell us, what does trauma mean to you from your perspective? From your perspective, what does trauma mean to you?
From my perspective, trauma definitely, I would have to say it's been a root of my life.
Okay, wow.
I know I could give a definition of what trauma is, but it's been the definition of my life.
So what is the definition of your life?
Grief.
Wow.
Grief. I will start there. And what I've come to realize recently is that it is not just of a loss of a person that's near and dear or people that you know. It's grief of life in general, how you go through life and what happens to you in life.
So if you can be a little bit transparent to help somebody, watching this. I know you said it's the root of your life, and you said, not just the experience of losing someone, but what happens throughout that lifespan. So share with us, what has happened. You don't have to go into deep detail, but just to give us a little more understanding and clarity of, grief or trauma.
Okay. Let's start with as early as 3.
Okay.
My father's mother passed away.
Wow.
And so I think that's the earliest memory of grief that I have. And then after that was my mother's mother at 5. Now, at 5, I was, of course, more aware than I was at 3, even though there are memories in my head. Like I can remember the funeral, I can remember the time. But with my granny, she lived with us. And so when you would walk in the house, her room would be right there on the right-hand side. So every single day, every night, I'm in that room. When I used to get in trouble, I would run to her, so I wouldn't get in trouble. And so I remember coming home from school one day and the light was off. That never was a thing. And then I looked in the living room and my mother's family is here. Why is she here? Why are they here, per se? And then my father took me downstairs and his family is down there. why are y'all here on this random, December day? What's going on? And so he was like, you still wanted your nails painted, right? And I'm like, yeah. So he was like, go get them and I'll paint them for you. I got him. I went back downstairs and he said, I have to tell you something. And he told me that my grandmother passed away. And I remember the first feeling that I felt of grief.
Wow.
And it shook me. It did. So that's the earliest memory of grief. It goes on throughout the time. So, yeah.
So currently, what is the current standpoint of it? Or before you answer that, have you recovered or, recovered from the little girl that experience?
That's a good question. And it's a good question because I think I've been on a never-ending runway of grief. And so I don't know if it's recovery or if it's a healing journey.
It's good.
And so understanding that, you have to acknowledge first that it's inevitable to grieve in life. And I think we get it misconstrued with losing a person rather than understanding that we deal with grief on a day-to-day basis and we never acknowledge it and we keep going. And that's why we have people with such mental illness, or that's why we have people who have anger issues the way they do. That's why we have people who don't know how to communicate. And so it's my goal to be able to help people understand what grief really looks like.
So what brought you to that point of acknowledging? Was it at that 5-year-old mark? What stage in life where you was just like, you know what? This is grief. I have to accept this. I have to own this. Not only do I have to accept and own it, but I got to come to a resolution.
So I don't think it was per se a moment of understanding grief. I think it was the moment that I understood I had to be better than what situation I was in and who I currently was. And so there was a moment in time, I was outside in the Atlanta streets.
Okay, outside.
I was outside.
Okay.
Although I grew up in church, there was a moment once I turned 18, I threw all of that out and said, all right, I'm outside. Granted, the people I was with, okay, we done did all this outside. We're going to church this day. But it was very much different than being in church 7 days a week or 5 days a week, 3 days out of the week to not going at all. And so there was a point where I was dealing with trauma and spirituality, and I was being tormented. And in the tormenting, I was calling out to God. And so there was a turning point at the point I had a miscarriage.
Wow.
And my father called me in the middle of it. He did not know what was going on. I had already been to the hospital twice. They said there was nothing that they could do, and I just had to pass it.
Wow.
And so what I didn't know, what I found out after I passed it, I was between 13 and 16 weeks. And so he called me about a previous hospital bill. And I'm like, what you talking about? I just, it totally slipped my mind that I had been to the hospital maybe a couple months prior for like bronchitis and something else, something simple. Well, not simple, but you know what I'm saying.
Probably,
and so I had to break down and tell my father that I was in the process of having a miscarriage. And he yelled at me.
Wow.
And he said, see, I told you to come home. When you coming home? And he just going off and I'm quiet. And he gets quiet. And he says, are you okay? I said, not really. And he said, what do you need? I'm coming to you. I'm bringing it to you. He brought me, these different things. And he looked at my stepsister and said, take care of my baby. He looked at me and again said, when are you coming home? I finally went home. And during that time, God spoke to me audibly. And I was contemplating on going to cosmetology school here in Atlanta or back home in Maryland. Why in Maryland? I don't know. And so it was such a fight that God literally woke me up out of my sleep and said, go home. And I say, it scared the mess out of me. I ain't never in my life heard something so loud and so fatherly in my life. And it was at that point I realized there was more and I had to be better.
That's good. So would you say your environment in trauma plays a part for someone that's dealing with trauma? Touch on the importance of the environment, because you said, you had this trauma and then, you was outside and then you had to switch from that outside to get into a different atmosphere. Touch on the significance or the importance of the environment when you're navigating through that trauma or whatever trauma somebody may be going through.
That is, I never pointed that out. Thank you. It's so important to have a environment of peace when you are dealing with trauma. I think what drives a lot of our generation to not deal with that trauma is the excitement of the outside world. And a lot of people will say they're smoking or drinking or doing these things to get away from something or to numb a feeling. Yes, that's true, but it's an environment of comfortability because they don't have to face themselves. They don't have to face the trauma. And what I sought out was, no, I have to be better. Right. I have to place myself around people that are better. I have to get back to my roots. I have to figure this out on my own. And I challenged God. I did. Oh, if you really real, show me how real you are. Didn't know where that was going to lead. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. One, I didn't know it was going to lead to an audible voice. Two, I didn't know it was going to be, lead me back to church. Yeah. I didn't know it was going to lead me to ministry. I didn't know it was going to lead me to the apostolic. Because what is that? I grew up Baptist. So in it all, it was very life-shaking. And again, my environments throughout trauma in different stages, I've always placed myself in a different environment. And sometimes you go back. And I don't think we talk about that enough in our church environments, that we go back to be comfortable. And then we go forward to challenge and to stretch. And then we sink back. And it's been a never-ending back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until you get grounds.
So what can you say to someone who is in that back and forth? What can they do to propel them forward, to accelerate them forward? They're fighting back and forth in this moment with their trauma.
I think
put yourself in this question.
Yeah.
I know navigating through trauma is something that can be ongoing, and it's not going to happen overnight for recovery. But baby steps is still progress. So for somebody that's trying to get to that, to that point of the baby steps, what can help them? What has helped you to kind of move forward? Because as you said earlier, you're in school, throughout this trauma, you've published books, you're an author, cosmetology, you do hair, you have so many great things going on. So what can help somebody to still kind of move in purpose throughout their trauma?
Many people question how I get through.
Yeah.
Go ahead, throw this in right here. I've lost my mother. I've lost my father. I just recently lost my brother. I lost my godmother. I just recently lost my godfather. Wow. Both grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends, close friends that I've grown up with. And recently just found out another person that I know committed suicide because of an incident that they committed. Wow. And that's just people alone. I've lost a car. I've lost my salon. I've lost my townhome. I've lost myself. I've lost time. I've almost lost my mind several times, even inside of church. Wow. And so the only thing that has kept me is my faith. is my delusional belief in God. It sounds crazy, but I'm delulu for him. I really am. And the things that I've done to move forward may look crazy to other people and has looked crazy to other people. The things that I've said, what I've heard God say to me, and the things that I've walked out, it looks crazy. I think the one thing that people need to know, need to recognize, and need to literally understand is that your belief will take you further than your own eyesight.
Wow.
It'll propel you in ways that you will never understand. Even when you take 10 steps back, it's for a reason. It's for a purpose. And that's why you can leap, over walls. And now I got feet like Hind's feet. And now I'm jumping and taking territory. And during taking territory, people don't understand that you still have moments where you take a couple steps back, either on purpose or incidentally. So it's not just the baby steps. It's a thought process that I can, I will, and I shall. He said it, I believe it.
So let's say there's somebody watching this right now who, after hearing you give, be very transparent on the things you've lost, they may pose the question, why should I believe in God? Or as you put it, why should I be delulu about God? I mean, you lost your salon, you lost your car, you lost your residency, close people in proximity to you have gone on. Why should I hold on to faith, in my situation, in my circumstance? After seeing you, hearing what you just said, why should I hold on? What has kept you holding on? I know you said faith, but what about faith? What has kept you holding on?
It's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm delusional,
okay,
and I don't see it, but I believe it.
Yeah.
It took 2 Chainz how long to become, not Titty Boy. He's 2 Chainz. He was 40-something years old. Why should I give up in the process? No, my name holds weight. Even though it doesn't look like it, it's going to be in lights one day.
Yeah.
I'm going to be on a billboard one day. Somebody that I don't know is going to ask me for my autograph because I believe it. I can achieve it. So I think where trauma meets character and trauma meets identity and trauma meets purpose, you have to believe it. In the middle of the two is belief.
Yeah.
If I'm on this anchor of going on the seesaw, right? In the middle, is balance. My belief is balance. The question I'll ask them is, what do you really believe? What do you believe? Do you believe that you can do it? Why not? Oh, because my mother said I couldn't, or my teacher said I could. Who are they? They bleed the same blood you do.
So would you say your belief, because I know for some, they may say their belief is tied to a particular encounter or an experience with God. So I'm kind of trying to get you to dive a little bit more. What has got you to this belief? Was it a particular encounter? Was it a particular experience? I know you said you had that moment with God, return home. But what, throughout everything you've lost, throughout the trauma, what has kept you believing? You talked a little bit about, the mind, and we just had a previous episode dealing with the mind, winning in the mind. So what has kept you rooted and grounded to keep your sanity when you should be insane?
Man, several times over. I get what you're saying, and let's go back to my roots. Grew up Baptist. I grew up in church 7 days a week. My mother was in charge of almost every ministry, and I could name them going down the line. I was the baby of the church, right? Okay. And so my first time getting baptized, I was 7 years old. It wasn't because of other people. It was because I knew that I had to do it. During this time, my parents weren't good. My parents really weren't good my entire life. Let's just keep that real. And There were moments they had, good times, but the arguing and bickering every single night and me putting myself to sleep, rocking myself to sleep, crying myself to sleep because I'm listening to this abuse. And so I not only grew up in church 7 days a week, I grew up going to a Christian school. And you could say I've always imagined the bigger, the greater, and I've always believed in God. And so it's hard for me to pinpoint a time because there's always been a time. Every single night, me and my mother would pray. She would literally kneel on the bed, on the side of the bed with me and pray. And so I didn't know anything else. And the moment I tried to do something else was the moment I got caught up. Wow. I'm not just supposed to be in a mental house. Literally, my homeboy got shot right behind me. The bullet was meant for me, and I just found this out last year. Even though I knew it, it was confirmed through a prophet. I lost my own child. That was 12 years ago now. I've almost lost my mind, even at altars waiting to be prayed for when I see the people that I'm supposed to bring to church being prayed for, and I'm not getting prayer, and I'm going crazy. I can't even grab a hold of a thought. And so there hasn't been just one encounter, but that is the base of my belief is the encounters. Mm-hmm. And when I literally challenged God, all right, show me, that's when the prophetic was brought alive to me. And so why should I believe? Why shouldn't you? Why not try God? Oh, I tried him. No, you tried church. You ain't really tried Jesus. You ain't try him. You ain't tried Abba. Because if you try Abba, there's nothing better. If you ask Holy Spirit, man, you'll be led even in the dark. I've been outside so many times, even in church, still outside. Let's be real. Guess what? I know when to leave. I also know sometimes I was there just to cover my friends. So it's a matter of, do you want to believe? Do you really want to try? Do you really think? And so again, you have trauma, you have purpose, identity, destiny, and in the middle is belief. That's your balance, belief. I don't know how to, get a little deeper than that. That's just it.
So just with you talking, my mind, I'm not trying to be too biblical, but my mind reflects back to Job. Would you consider yourself like a Job? He lost everything. Money, family. Do you consider yourself like Job in the Bible?
I do. And, but I also recently considered myself as Jacob too. I'm not letting go until you bless me.
Yeah.
And what is that? Belief. I believe that you're still going to bless. I'm fighting with you.
That's good.
I'm fighting with you. But I'm not letting go. I can't let go. If I let go, I've seen the other side. I've seen the demons. And I mean physically seen the demons. I've experienced them trying to drive me insane. I don't want that. No, I believe that the end is better than what this was. I'm not letting go. Yes, I've lost everything. And I mean everything, except for my belief.
That's good. I mean, you pretty much just said it right there, how Jacob wrestled. He wrestled with that angel, but he uttered out of his mouth that, Lord, I'm not letting go until you bless my soul. So that, should be some encouragement for somebody watching this, that, in spite of what you're going through, in spite of what you may lose, in spite of what you may face, you've got to hold on to God. You've got to hold on to what you know. You said it all started from your roots. Yeah. But even in holding on, there's still going to be circumstances, situations, and more trauma. But you've got to continue to hold on. So, Virginia, throughout all of this trauma, even recent trauma, what are some ways that you can share with somebody to help them to continue holding on? Yeah. What are some ways? Or what has helped you? I know you said God, I know you said your faith, but what does that look like? Is that journaling? Is that writing? Is that having an accountability partner, a prayer partner? What does that look like?
First, let me say this. I don't want nobody to think that I'm just,
Of course.
just God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because life happens and I
Right.
experience life, and I'm not always in the front of an altar.
Of
There's
course. Yeah.
sometimes
I
that I
feel
have
you.
been outside. There's sometimes I'm in my bedroom screaming and crying. There's sometimes I'm just not doing church at all. I'm not following my pastor. I'm not going. I don't feel like it. Let's just be real. Let me keep it
Yeah.
there. But the first step was acknowledgement, has always been acknowledgement.
Wow.
We don't acknowledge what we are going through. We do not talk to people about what we go through.
That's good.
And the people that we talk to have no wisdom to pour into us.
Wow.
They have no experience based on what we've experienced, so they can't feed us. And so we're asking questions to people who hold no weight. Their words hold no value. And so we're wondering why we can't move forward. We talking to the wrong people. After acknowledgement, after talking it out, accountability is so important.
Yeah.
And you can't be accountable to people who don't hold themselves accountable either.
That's good. Say it one more time. That's good. That's good.
You cannot be accountable to people who do not hold themselves accountable either.
Wow.
And so I think after accountability is, I would say counseling. I would say therapy. We as Black people don't, we're acknowledging it more now, our generation and generations after are, but there's still people who are scared of it.
Yeah.
But I recommend it. Have I gone? No. I have my reasoning, not saying that I'm not going to, but I do talk to my pastor who can counsel me. I do have adults, older adults, wiser adults around me, and also friends who can help counsel me through certain things. And you have to be around people who are going to tell you the truth about yourself.
That part. Yeah.
Don't sugarcoat me. Nah, tear me apart for real. Because a lot of us need tough love.
Yeah.
We don't need to be, all Careberry. No, we need tough love. After that, I would say start writing. I think after my mother passed, that's the first thing I started to do. And it sounds crazy and not trying to be all deep, but the first thing I wrote was, help me, God. Help me. And I used to just write, help me, help me, help me. Because it was a process that I had to go through at 12, getting ready to turn 13 without a mother. My father was 50 years older than me.
Wow.
What a gap. I had to cook, clean, and still do school and everything else, and live with someone who I can't communicate with properly. It took me from that time till I was 21 for us to really start communicating properly. And so after journaling, get a community of people that have experienced the loss that you have, the grief that you have, the trauma that you have. And you'll see that you're not alone and that your belief is bigger than just you.
That's good. I want you to share these next 60 seconds as we're getting ready to wrap this up. To any young girl, any young boy, any woman or man, what would you say to them in these next 60 seconds on navigating through trauma? What would you say to them? You can look at that camera right there. What would you say?
To you, young girl, to you, young man, to you, woman, to you, grown man, to you, elderly folks out there, I would say to you on navigating trauma, grief, loss, you have to acknowledge it. When you acknowledge it, you can easily go through it. Although it's not easy, you'll be able to step through the fire, step through the mud easier than you would if you don't acknowledge it. Get you accountability partners, find you a counselor, find you a therapist, find you a church home, and find good people that could surround you that understand where you are. Listen, it's not easy. Loss is inevitable, and it will happen continuously out through your life. So get the help you need now.
Listen, I've hoped this episode on navigating through trauma, this transparency of the moments, has helped you to, if you got a journal. If you got to get your accountability partner, get your accountability partner. But as Virginia said, you've got to acknowledge that you need help. Nothing can be fixed until you face it. I believe my brother on the previous episode just said that. Nothing can be fixed until you face it. Virginia, listen, thank you. You came a long way.
Oh, Jesus.
You came a long way. And I appreciate you for coming to grace us with your presence to share in transparency, because I know everybody cannot open up in transparency, to be real on what they're going through or, what they have experienced. So it is my prayer, that everything you've lost, that God gives you back double, not even double, but more, just for your obedience, to continue to thrive and strive in the midst of trauma, in the midst of pain, in the midst of grief. Just as I said to my previous friend and brother who lost his sister, his brother-in-law, his nephew, unborn niece, and then a few years later lost his dad, I don't know how I would, maneuver through that. But even throughout your loss, you've got evidence to back up what you're saying about your belief. You could be, wherever you are in a stationary, complacent position, but you're yet maneuvering, you're yet producing. So my encouragement to you is keep maneuvering, keep producing, keep writing. Yeah. Somebody needs to hear your story and what God has put in you to help encourage their time with God. Yeah. Keep maneuvering, keep producing. I'm going to say it again. Keep maneuvering, keep producing. Yeesh. Listen, I admonish everybody. I believe this is on Amazon, right?
Yes, they both are.
Both of these amazing books are on Amazon. Yeah. I admonish you to flood Amazon and get Good Morning, God.
And look out for the next two that are coming out.
Okay, next two.
One is called Help I Lost a Parent. It's a grief guide, a navigation, through grief and loss of a parents. And then the next one, which has been done since 2018.
Okay.
Withholding Nothing.
Wow.
And it's sharing my story. I got a little editing to do because it's been about 6 years of work. But before the year's over, they will both be out.
And that's why I said keep producing and keep maneuvering. Listen, I admonish every one of you to like, to share, comment, and I hope this episode has helped you in some way, some shape, some fashion to navigate through your trauma. Until next time, keep moving and keep producing.